Hello and welcome to News Laundry. Today we have with us Aruna Roy, who will not talk about anything other than literature. Is that right, ma'am?
Yes.
No activism, nothing else. To begin with, your favorite pieces of literature?
You know, I've always fended off this question because I don't have one favorite. I have so many favorites.
Yeah, so pieces.
And it depends on which mood and what I want to read and so on. But, you know, I'd like to talk about the people who've made humor the medium of very strong political comment and very strong philosophical
and often
comment.
is the most effective political comment.
So I would say that I really do like the beginning. I will talk about English literature now because you have to narrow it down to some literature. Right. And since we're speaking in English, that for me an all-time favorite is Alice in Wonderland, because it's a parody of, and it's a kind of extremely important comment on so many things in life. If you can think back, I don't know if you've read it, I don't know if your generation reads Alice in Wonderland.
It was compulsory when I was in school.
There is a very interesting conversation between Humpty Dumpty and Alice, where there's this conversation about who's the master of the word. And she says this word doesn't mean that. And he says it's not the meaning that matters. All that matters, who's master of that word. So in today's politics, and in today's public media, you know, words are used and misused, but the more it's used in a particular manner, the more its meaning changes. And then when anybody else uses that word, then the change of that word becomes far more important. The meaning becomes, that meaning gets the established meaning. So I think, you know, literature is not far away from what I do normally. But it gives me
a very effective tool in activism. I mean, since you are in activism,
it's not really activism, I would say, in a human being's life. Because what it does is, it takes you away from your immediate environment, but it gives you a location in a perspective and a capacity to both reflect and to be amused at your own absurdities. Because, you know, the trouble is that we can't grow as activists or people or politicians or writers or anything unless we can see what is ludicrous in ourselves.
Do you think Indians have a problem with being able to laugh at themselves?
There are 2-3 things. One is that lampooning somebody, then I think then it goes beyond humor into a different area.
Even
like,
so,
like
should we take ourselves
like the
seriously?
TV has been doing of Mayawati. It borders a kind
As
of
in
lampooning.
news TV?
Yeah, I've been seeing some. I don't see much of television. I'm not a TV addict at all. So I occasionally see. But if you take, for instance, humor, one of the best books as a critique on feminism that I've ever read was by a British friend of mine called Jill Tweedy. She used to write the women's page for The Guardian. And she wrote a book called Letters from a Faint-Hearted Feminist, which was 2 sisters. One a very, very staunch and stereotyped feminist, and the other one a very conventional, stereotyped conservative woman. And through the letters, you caught the idiosyncrasies and the ridiculousness of both these kinds of statements. So you sometimes go middle of the road and you understand the absurdities of either situation. That's why this literature festival is so important to me. Because I come here and it's in the literature of the world today and what it chooses on as its topics, what it chooses to say,
so when you say
that there is a growth in one's mind and a capacity to develop. And of course in India, to answer your question, we are not a very fun-loving people by and large. Though mind you, in the rural campaigns,
we are fun-loving as long as it's not at our expense.
That can be called fun-loving. That can be called something else.
Sure.
Fun-loving means much more.
Right.
And I think the one community that's really fun-loving in India are the Punjabis, who have really believed in getting the best out of it. But the rest, I think we always have a guilt if we have fun. You know, we just feel that it's not something that we should be doing. But I do think that for political education, humor and satire are very important. Irony is very important.
When you say it's important to look at oneself, the ridiculous or ludicrous side of oneself or one's own actions, do you ever dissect yourself in that way? I mean, have you ever seen yourself in a sense that whether it was a phase of what you did or anything, like, does that apply to you? Have you ever had a look at yourself and said, oh, this is so ridiculous about me? Does that happen? I mean, I think observations...
I've never stopped doing it. That's why I look for it outside, because it gives me a sense of well-being.
Such as,
And
give me an example.
such as, I've always
Would you
seen.
describe yourself as feminist first of all?
Sorry.
Do you describe yourself as a feminist?
I definitely describe myself as a feminist. My generation, we fought many battles,
Right.
which younger women today just take for granted.
Yeah, I know
So,
what you mean.
and also distort, because for us, the way we got married, the clothes we wore, what we chose as values were all important. Because, you know, the feminist slogan is, "My life is a revolution."
Okay.
And the other
yours
one
has
is
been?
personal is political. So we don't divide.
Okay.
So seeing oneself, I think, in that fashion has been very important. And I always have a part of me which critically views myself.
Okay.
So it's a constant phenomena for me, which can be serious, it can be fun-loving, it can see the ludicrous. And very often with my very intimate friends and my children, I don't have any biological children, but I have hundreds of them. I love the ridiculous, and I think it's great fun. So to see the ridiculousness in myself, as well as the absurdities of my own idiosyncrasies, has been very important for me to grow out of them and also to deal with them, because we are all idiosyncratic. There's no human being who's not.
It's not sure. The feminism angle, how has feminism changed, you think, from the time when you were young? And like you said, the feminists today who take a lot of battles for granted that have all been fought and won.
You know, I think we were conscious feminists. So we had political feminist issues, social feminist issues. We had rituals. Now, I don't wear any sign of marriage. I'm married quite happily. I've been married for 41 years. And I've not divorced my husband, and he doesn't divorce me, and we'll stay married.
All right.
But you cannot pin any symbol on me, and it was a great point of contest.
Was
when
he
we got
cool with
married.
that, or did he have a problem? Or?
Why? He's a feminist. He's given me space. We have differences of opinion. We work differently, but we are very good friends, and we married very simply. We agreed that there would be no money spent. So in all this, every act was viewed politically for us. Today, I think things have changed. You have people who are very progressive, who would spend lakhs of rupees on their wedding, would have no questions about that, you know, who would...
You think your battle would have been more difficult, or would you have married a husband who would not have such a liberal view of feminism? I mean, like for a lot of women maybe who are like that in their mental makeup like you, but they get married to a man who may appear to be like that, but scratch the surface he's not. That changes their approach to feminism completely.
Actually, you see, Bunker and I were students together in Delhi University, and I knew him for 5 years before we had the courage to really think of marriage.
Sure.
So I think he and I knew each other quite well when we got married, and we knew what we were going in for. Though there's always the unpredictable after marriage, but it was not on the basis of
Gender
the
dynamic.
No, not on basis of principles, but in terms of temperament and other issues. Yes, there's always change. But we've been very firm in the beliefs that we have had, and we've been extremely generous to each other about space, about space mentally, to think differently, space to work separately, to think differently. And I think one of the biggest running commentaries in my life is what Bunker says to me about things he doesn't agree with.
I see. Is there any feminist literature you think right now in India today of consequence?
I think lots, but in the vernacular, of course. I think
Right.
Mashweta Devi is fantastic. There's so many women who've written so beautifully. There are new writers in Kerala whom I've read in translation. I've read, Marathi writers in translation. Of course, there's always feminist literature. But it's now the way you look at life, the way you interpret love and marriage, the way you look at politics. Feminism is everything. It's also a worldview where you fight for peace and not for war.
Feminism and politics is interesting, you should say, because when you have a Mamata Banerjee, a Mayawati, a Sonia Gandhi, a Jayalalitha, you think that's, does that...
No. Feminism doesn't mean putting a
Just-
woman at the head of an institution. For us, feminism has been buying a worldview. Where you talk of collective leadership, where you talk of participation, where you talk of equality, where you
Do you
talk
view
of...
these women as feminists?
Partly, yes, they're all feminists, but partly they fall into the masculine paradigm of political power. That's all. But you created it. It'll take a long time to whittle it away.
You being?
The men.
I see, okay. One more question. You think it becomes almost a reflex action for an activist such as yourself, who's a feminist, and amongst most activists who I've met, combativeness comes naturally to them. It's almost as if the first reaction to any confrontation is combat rather than reconciliation. Do you think it's an internalized reflex with activists?
I don't think so, and I don't think it's been like that with me in all situations. It has been when there's been an unequal situation.
Then it's combat to the first
Then
reaction.
it is combat. If there's somebody more powerful than I, either politically or status-wise or just muscle power, then yes. But if I see somebody who's equal, then it's not so. And this is so in life generally with everybody. And I think that's something we need to understand.
Thank you so much for your time. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.